for joining us today. I'm Emma Nguyen, Head of Marketing for Morgan McKinley UK. We're delighted to welcome back Talane Miedaner to present our second Success Series webinar, Clear Your Desk and Organise Your Professional Life. Talane is the founder of lifecoach.com and she's an international best-selling author, speaker and coach. To view our upcoming events, jobs, career advice and blogs, please visit morganmckinley.com. We're also excited to announce that Talane will be our keynote speaker for our Coach Yourself to Success event on Thursday, 20th of June at 6:30 p.m. in our London office. If you're in London and would like to attend, please email us events@morganmckinley.co.uk to reserve your place. I would like to run through some housekeeping tips before we start. We will be recording this webinar and it will be available next Monday on our YouTube channel by searching Morgan McKinley Recruitment or visiting our website. You can join the webinar by connecting to the audio using your computer or laptop, microphone and speakers, or select Use Telephone after joining the webinar. Questions will be taken via the question or chat feature on your control panel. We hope you enjoy the webinar and please join the conversation on Twitter @Morgan McKinley using hashtag Success Series and hashtag Career Ally. I'd like to tell you more about a very special presenter, Talane. As mentioned before, Talane is the owner and founder of lifecoach.com and she's a successful author, speaker and master certified coach. She has published 3 international bestsellers including Coach Yourself to Success, The Secret Laws of Attraction, The Effortless Way to Get the Relationship You Want, and Coach Yourself to a New Career. I'm now delighted to introduce you to Talane. Hi, Talane.
Hi. Yeah, well, welcome, everyone. Thanks for having me here today. First thing I should probably tell you is that you can tell I'm an American, no doubt about my accent, but I've been living in the UK now for 9 years. It comes from married an Englishman, and I have 2 kids here as well. But I've coached people all over the world, and our coaching company works with executives and professionals from every part of the globe, even as far as Australia. So unfortunately with these webinars, it's kind of a one-way street because I end up doing most of the talking. And you guys don't have too much chance to chat except in the little chat things. And Emma will take any questions that you have and gather them up, and I'll take a break about midway through, and we'll get some of your questions answered. And then we'll also take some time at the end of the webinar. Now the same thing's starting to happen with coaching is that people are realizing, wait a minute, why I don't have to just let the presidents of the world or the CEOs of companies, they get the advantage of having a coach. Well, I can hire a coach too, and they're starting to bring that edge, that advantage into their own working and professional life now too. So I can see these numbers are gradually creeping up. So I like to see that, of course, being in the business. But it is, I think, something that's going to happen that more and more people are going to be hiring them just because they're going to want that competitive edge that you can get from coaching. So let's go right and dive right smack dab into our topic here. Now I've got a feel for who's out there. The webinar today is called Clear Your Desk and Organize Your Professional Life. And the first question you have to ask is, well, why the mess in the first place? What's going on here that we have a mess to begin with? Because some people obviously have clean desks. They just seem to manage to keep their desks nice and clear and tidy and clean and are well organized. So, what's the difference? What makes the big difference between the person who has the tidy desk and the person with a messy desk? Because, before we start cleaning things up, I could just start giving you some tips about, okay, well, here's how you clean your desk, da-da-da-da-da. But we really should look at the source of the problem. And in any sort of coaching relationship, when there's a problem somewhere, I like to find out, well, why is it a problem in the first place? And can you get to the source of it? Because if you can, well, that gives people some leverage and some edge in terms of sorting themselves out. So that's the big question. What's the big difference? Now, there's a couple of things. There's 2 things that really make a big difference. And I'm actually going to start with item 3 here. A lot of it has to do with how your brain is hardwired up to be. In our coaching company, we use some objective computerized assessments with our clients that can tell them how their brain is wired up, and we really are more hardwired. And yes, our brains have a certain plasticity, and we can learn new things at any time in our life. But it takes about 10,000 hours to create a new neural pathway. So if you didn't have an ability and really worked at it, 10,000 hours is about 5 years of 8 hours a day of working on something. So I think that should put you at ease and think, if I'm kind of a messy person, I'm naturally going to be wired up to be that way. yeah, it could take a huge amount of effort potentially to become a tidy person. Now, I've got good news and bad news about that. So number one, your brain is already wired up in some sense that you're going to be, if you are a messy desk person, that you're kind of hardwired up that way. And here's why, and this is the good news. The good news is that often people, and it's not always 100%, but often people with messy desks are internally organized. They're very mentally organized. Their brain is organized. They have a logical brain. Now, you may think that sounds a bit strange, because, well, if they're so organized internally, they can actually get away with having a messy desk because they are so organized internally. So their thoughts are organized. So for those of you who are here, I'm just going to guess that you've got one of those organized brains, and you actually are more logical. Your brain can put things in a natural order and prioritize things. You actually have an organized brain. Because if you didn't, you might find that you actually couldn't do your work until you cleaned your desk. So the people who don't have such organized or logical brains, they tend to have to clean their desk because otherwise they can't think clearly. Whereas the people with messy desks may find that they can sit down, write a report, do something that requires thinking and logical effort without a problem, even though there's stacks of papers all over their desk. And people say, well, how can you work in this environment? So somebody who isn't naturally brain organized would not be able to focus. They wouldn't be able to work in such an environment. And so they tend to keep their desk clean because it's the only way they can function. Whereas the messy desk people can often function just fine and get their work done, even though it looks like a right war zone where they are. So that's kind of the good news and the bad news at the same time. So for those of you who might be beating yourself up and thinking, I really should get a handle on my desk, part of the problem is that you're internally organized. And that actually can be quite a good thing. So that's kind of the good news, bad news on that. Now, the good news is that anybody can learn to be organized, and it doesn't necessarily take 10,000 hours. So I'm going to give you some shortcuts in today's webinar on how you, too, can apply some of the tactics of the tidy desk people. And so that is actually the second point here. The major difference between the people with the tidy desk and the messy desk, regardless of how your brain is wired up, is that the people with tidy desks spend time cleaning up their desk. They spend time tidying their desk. And the people with a messy desk don't. That is the critical difference. So I could give you all sorts of organizational tips and blah, 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 blah. And, I could give you tons of stuff, which I will. We'll give you some good little tips, so don't worry about that. But none of those will make any difference if you don't spend 10 to 15 minutes a day at the end of each working day cleaning your desk. And that's what, if you observe the tidy people, they spend 10 to 15 minutes a day tidying their desk every day. So the first thing is we've got to get to a clean slate to start with, because you can't. The maintenance is 10 to 15 a day. But if you're buried, you're not going to get unburied in 10 minutes. The average time is 16 hours to even sort through your stuff. So people don't give themselves enough time to get organized. So there you go. So at this point, effectively, you could actually leave the webinar because I've given you the big secret. And that is the big difference, is that this clue is the time. But now that leads to another question. Well, why aren't you spending the time that the tidy desk organized people are spending? So why is it that you're not doing that? Now, the first thing I'm going to tell you is I'm going to confess. I'm not a professional organizer. I'm a life coach. And I'm one of those messy desk people. I'm a naturally internally organized person, and I know this because I've actually taken the test myself to see that, so I know it's computer verified. But I am, can prioritize and organize and write well, and all the things that it helps to have a logical and organized brain. And for that reason, I can work in a messy environment and still be productive. So the question is, why the messy desk? Well, I don't actually spend any time cleaning it, because there's always something much more interesting to do, or something that seems much more important or more critical. So there's always going to be some more mission critical or much more interesting things to do than tidying the desk. So then I don't devote time to it, and then you end up with a messy desk. So now you're probably thinking, okay, well, why did we bring in her to talk about the clear the desk topic if she's got a messy desk? Well, precisely. If somebody's already got a clean desk, they're not going to appreciate how hard it is for those, the rest of us mere mortals who have the messy desk problem. Whereas I can truly appreciate it from a personal perspective because I'm like that. So if I can conquer this, then you guys can conquer it too. And that's the good news. And I have discovered after, so I was leading this webinar before for another organization, and I said, well, I better darn well clean my desk before I can teach this topic. And so I've applied, after reading and consulting all the experts, I've had to actually apply these principles and tips to my own desk to see if they worked. And that's where I discovered that you can read all these different books on getting organized, but the key is, are you actually spending or going to spend 10 to 15 minutes a day maintaining your clean desk? Because if you don't, you'll soon be right back where you started. Okay, so there we go. Why is the mess there in the first place? The major difference is the people who have a tidy desk actually spend time every day clearing their desk. And they may need to because their brains may not be as organized as your brain is. So on the other hand, sometimes just people, my husband has a very organized brain, but he also has a need for order. It's a personal and emotional need to have things be ordered and clear. And he's very visually oriented. So he gets distracted visually if there's a mess on his desk. So that's another reason too why some people have clean desks, is because they can easily get visually distracted. Right? So there you go. Those are the sources. Let's look at a few key distinctions here about organization. Because before you can actually organize yourself, it helps to understand what we're talking about. There's a debate as to whether organizing is a natural talent or a learned skill. And from all these books that I've read, a lot of them say, well, I think that it's actually hardwired in, as we said. From these computerized assessments, we can tell that. On the other hand, you can actually learn to organize yourself better, regardless of how your brain is. So with a few little tips and techniques, you can learn to be organized, and you can learn to keep your desk clear. The other attitude that people with a messy desk feel is that getting organized, getting to that clear desk is an overwhelming chore. And that can definitely be the case. If you've got stacks of paper piled up high and file folders that are bursting at the seams, and you look at this and think, oh my gosh, I'm never going to get time to do this. And it just seems like this huge overwhelming chore or task, or even just doing that 15 minutes a day might seem, I just can't be bothered with that. Once you can shift your thinking to the organizing as actually a liberating, cleansing, and empowering process. So if you can shift from, oh, this is a horrible chore, I don't want to do it, to actually, this is really liberating, I feel great, and most people do, even the internally organized people, feel better and are more productive when their desk is clear. Psychologically, it's just a bit overwhelming. If you come into your office and have a nice clean desk, you feel like, oh wow, fresh start to the day. And it does provide a very nice, clean feeling in the morning, as opposed to when you come into your office and it's buried in papers. You might just feel, and have this sort of downward feeling, a little bit of a negative feeling, like, look at all this work. And so that alone in itself is worth spending some time for. And that's going to be my job today, is to convince you that those 15 minutes a day is actually worth it. And from being a messy desk person myself, I have learned that actually it is worth it. And walking into a clean office is a wonderful feeling. And you feel fresh, you feel liberated, you feel energized, and you think, oh, what am I going to start today? And that's a great thing. Number 3 here, some people feel that staying organized is impossible. So you might think, oh, I've done this before, I've cleared everything, got it all down to 0, and then within short order it just becomes a mess, so why bother? Now here's the key, the shift here, is to move to have systems designed the way you think and the way you work, so that staying organized is actually easier to do than it is to stay disorganized. So that your filing systems are right there and handy, that it's so easy to it's just as easy to put that piece of paper into a file as it is to put it into a pile. So then you decide, just as easy to file, do that instead of piling it up. So it's about creating the systems that work for you, the way you work, and the way you think. the fourth point here is that sometimes people feel that organizing is a waste of time. And there are some people, we've been in the past, these internally organized people, and I'm just going to assume a lot of you are the same. We could get away with it. For a long time, we could get away with it. But I suspect that you're on this call today because it's gotten too much for you. It's overwhelming. And that we just can't get away with it anymore. So we've been able to do it, but now the problem with the 21st century is that we've got too much stuff coming in now. There's too many emails, there's too much paper, there's just too much stuff that comes in. And no matter how organized your brain is, we just can't keep it all in our brains anymore. It's just overwhelming information overload. And that's the reality of the way things are today now. So whereas in the past you might have been able to get away with it, now it's probably caught up with you, and it's just the speed and the pace and the sheer quantity of information that demands to be dealt with in the modern corporate world today is overwhelming now. So even those of us who've been able to get away with it for some time now are now finally feeling the pain of it. And that's just the reality of the world that we live in. It is no longer a waste of time to organize now. It has become an essential business survival skill. So that's kind of the bad news. Our world has gotten that busy and complicated, and we've got so much information that now everybody needs to learn to organize to be as effective as they can be. Okay, so in the quest for the secrets of organization, which I actually already told you at the beginning, it's all about spending 15 minutes a day, there's this thing about getting organized to start with. So for those of you with the stacks of papers and piles of stuff and overwhelming numbers of emails in your inbox, we got to figure out, okay, how do we get organized? How do we get to that clean starting point from which then our 15 minutes a day will keep us in order? Okay, so first we've got to get out from under the piles. And so this is where we look at, one of the books I read is from a gal named Julie Morgenstern, and she's got a book called Organizing from the Inside Out. And I liked her book quite a bit because she's a messy person, just like me. So I thought, okay, well, if she could get organized, well, then she must have figured something out. And she wrote this book and actually started a professional organizing company in America because she had a child. And when she had her baby and thought, oh, it's a beautiful sunny day, I'm going to take my kid out for a little stroll. And she thought she would do that, but then she couldn't get couldn't find the diaper bag or the nappies if you're here in the UK. She couldn't find the nappies, she couldn't find she thought, oh, I've got to get some milk, and then, oh, I need some little toys to play with, and maybe I better bring a blanket, and maybe I better bring a change of clothes. And by the time she organized herself to get her kid out, the sun was gone over, and it was already dark. And she suddenly realized that if she didn't get her life organized, her poor child would never see the light of day. And that was her incentive. And what she realized is that if you can organize one thing, and she organized the diaper bag or the nappy bag, and she organized that. And she said, if you can organize one thing, then you can organize everything in your life, whether it's your desk, your office, your kitchen cupboards, your wardrobe, or anything else. So the key thing, she says, and I like her strategy, is take a look first and analyze first what's working and what's not working. So first, she said the biggest mistake people make when they start out getting organized is they run out and buy supplies or containers or file cabinets or manila folders, or they run and buy supplies, containers. And she said first what you need to do is actually analyze what's working about your situation. What are you doing right? Maybe you're really caught up on your emails. Or maybe you managed to keep your inbox under control, or you have 2 square feet on your desk that's clear at any one time. So there might be some things you're doing well. So write down what those are and think, okay, this is working for me. I have a good system for handling this. Then take a look at what's not working. Where are you getting bogged down? And take a good look at that. Then you can start to think about, what are the most essential items? Do you need to get this organized? What's the key thing that will make the biggest difference for you? So if you're buried under paperwork, sorting out your papers, that might be the key thing that's to start with. And start with the big thing that makes the biggest difference first, not the little things. Then the next question is, why do you want to get organized? And again, this is really important to get clear on. What are the negative or the downsides for you personally, at work professionally, in your home and in your professional life? What is it costing you? Are you starting to get a reputation of somebody who's a bit of a ditherer, somebody who can't be trusted to store key documents, somebody who seems out of control? So maybe people are starting to think you're not as good as an employee as you could be, or maybe you're missing promotions because of the lack of organization, the perception that people have about you at work. But maybe it's just something more personal, that you'd like to just walk in and feel that your desk is clear and clean every day just because of the aesthetic beauty of that. Maybe you just want to feel less stressed and more in control. So take a moment to think about why is it that you want to get organized, and write those things down. You'll get a copy of the PowerPoint, I think, and you can write these things down. But that is really important, because otherwise you're not going to be committed to doing that 15 minutes a day. You won't. You've got to have some powerful reasons of why it's worth it, and write these things down. And then the sixth thing here to consider is, what is causing the problem? Is there a source somewhere for you? Do people just dump things on your desk? Do you not have a file cabinet? Take a look and see what's causing the problem. Is there a lot of emails that you shouldn't be getting, perhaps? Are you on every CC'd, from everybody and their brother? So take a look and see if you can identify what the source of the problem or sources of the problem might be in terms of your own disorganization. I was looking at this and I realized I've got a lot of receipts that I need to keep and store for tax reasons, and they're all over the place. I thought, I need a system for filing receipts and storing them. And so I bought a little thing for £6 that sorts receipts out. End of problem. So taking a look and say, gosh, I've got a lot of these things floating around. If you have a lot of Post-it notes, take a look and see, well, why do I have all these Post-it notes? Is it because you're a visually stimulated person and feel that you need a visual reminder or you'll forget something? Okay, so take a look at that. So we start with the inside. Julie Morgenstern, the gal who wrote the book Organizing from the Inside Out, has a system for creating space, and I like her system. It works. I've tried it. And so she's got this 5-step system of how you clear the backlog, how you get out from under, whatever it is. And this system, the great thing about the system, it works for everything. It works for papers. It works for clearing out your kitchen or your wardrobe or anything else. So once you learn the system for getting organized, you can take the system and apply it to any part of your life, personally or professionally. So the first step is to sort. And what she says, and this is the case, is our first tendency is usually to move to step 4, which is containerize, to search for containers. We think, oh, I'm going to get organized. I'm going to go out and buy some boxes or something to put stuff in. Wrong. She says, first you need to sort. And the key to success with these 5 steps is to do them in this exact order, precisely this order. And we get into trouble when we skip this order. She's got a business out of this now. So first is to sort. So that means like goes with like, categorize, identify what things are. Now, this is the other, this to me just blew my socks off. 16 hours. The average office, to get it tidy, requires 16 hours just to sort. So you can see why you might be a bit buried under. You've never actually given yourself. You might think, oh, I'll spend an hour or 2 organizing. Not enough time for the average person. Now, maybe you're not an average person. Maybe you're more on the tidy side. Or maybe you're worse and 16 hours isn't even going to be enough. So start to sort things out. So that when you're looking at papers, that means you'd want to put things that are action items into the pile to take action on. Things that are to be read should go into a reading basket or a reading file. So maybe all your client stuff or your reference books, you get all your reference books together in one pile. You get all your staplers in one pile. You get all your paper supplies in one supply. So it's like goes with like. So the first thing is to sort everything out. Once you've sorted, it's so much easier then to purge. Now, maybe while you're sorting, you see, oh gosh, this catalog that I have is 10 years out of date. You can just bin that right away. But we don't want to get into too many decision making, because what exhausts people in the organizing process is all the decisions that you make. And professional organizers usually don't work with people for more than 3 hours at a time. because they get exhausted, not the organizer themselves, the person who's clearing out the clutter. And the reason they get so exhausted is because of all the decisions that they're making. So the sorting part really isn't decision making. You're not deciding what to do with something. You're just saying, what is this? And putting it in a pile with other things that are like that. This is a reference book. Let me put it in the pile with the other reference books. This is a piece of paper that requires action. Let me put this in the pile of all the other pieces of paper that require action. And so you can start to categorize everything that way. Then it's so much easier to purge. I'd led this webinar before for another group, and somebody sent me an email and said they laughed because they found 3 staplers, and so didn't even realize they had 3 staplers. Well, it's very easy to purge then. And said, well, I only need 1, and then she took 2 and gave them to some colleagues who didn't seem to have a stapler. So that, very easy to give away stuff or purge it, in a sense, get it out of your office. If you see, oh gosh, I've got 10 of these, what do I need 10 for? And then that's actually a very quick and easy process once you've done the sorting part. So you do the sort first, then the purge. The third step is to assign a home to every single item. Everything needs a home. I had one client who used to work at Armani, the clothing store in Manhattan, in New York City, and she said they were so organized. They had a cubby hole for the stapler, a cubby hole for the paper clips and the tape. Everything was labeled, and it was all labeled. It was all labeled so you knew exactly where everything went. There wasn't anything that wasn't organized or had a home. So every single thing had a home to it. So figure out where things are going to live. And then you can say, okay, I've got all of these reference books and no space on my bookshelves. I need to go out and get more bookshelves. Or you realize I've got all these files, and after you've purged out the old files, you realize, gosh, I still don't have enough space. I need to buy a filing cabinet. So you start to see what supplies you actually need. And then you can actually measure them, because you can stack up all your files and say, gosh, I need 2 feet or 1 meter of additional filing space. So I have a home for this stuff. Then you know what you need. And then the 5th step is to equalize and maintain. And this is the adjusting your little bit of daily maintenance, your little bit of tune-ups. And this is what keeps your desk and office organized. It's that 10 to 15 minutes every day to say, okay, I'm going to put this piece of paper in the file. Oh, there's no room in my file. I'm going to need to clear something out or buy new filing space. So you can start to see if things stack up. And that keeps everything under control. So there's your key. That's your system. And you can apply the system to anything at all. It just makes it really easier. And I think the shocking thing for me, and I don't know if it is for you, is just how much time you need to spend to get out from under. And that's where so many people make a mistake and they go, oh, I can spend, I'll come in for a few hours, maybe 3 hours on stay late an hour or 2, and I'll have this whole thing sorted. Well, for most people, that won't be enough to really do it right. So give yourself a little bit more time than, a lot more time probably, than what you were anticipating. And do it in 3-hour chunks, because you might find that after 3 hours that's enough. Or even littler chunks. I didn't have 3-hour chunks when I was cleaning my desk, and so I just thought, well, I'll spend a half an hour doing it every day. And I just spent a half an hour doing this, and that was enough. And within a reasonable amount of time, it took me about a month or 2 working on it to get my own desk clear. But I was only giving it half an hour at a time. Okay. The other thing is get some help. If you're struggling with this, get somebody else to come in and help you, because you're the one who's most attached to your stuff, and sometimes an objective observer can say, well, what do you need all these things for? And they make it easier. So any questions about this so far? I'm going to take a little break here. We're about midway through.
Hi, Talane. Yes, we do have a great question from Ronan, who's in Dublin. He asked, is the paperless office possible or merely a pipe dream?
Yes, well, that's a really interesting question. Is it possible to go paperless? And the answer is yes. There was an article a month ago or so in the London Times about that very thing, about certain companies who have it's a requirement if you work with them that you're paper-free, and they have gone completely electronic, and that is the standard. It's a paper-free environment. and they don't have file folders. In fact, I think there is a filing system, but it's way down in the basement. So if you do end up with a piece of paper that needs filing, it's a major trip to get it into the, they're really discouraging people from printing papers and from keeping papers or working with papers. They want everything done electronically. So yep, it is completely possible. There are whole corporations using that as their way forward and going completely anti-paper. For most people, we're kind of, I know for me personally, I'm kind of in between. I have some things stored electronically, and I have some things stored on paper. And so I'm sort of in between those two worlds. And I think that's where most people are. We've got stuff that's electronically filed, and then we've got stuff that is paper filed. And can everything be scanned in and put on? I mean, there's very few documents that you actually would need. Your passport, your birth certificate. There's a few documents that you may actually need to have filed. But virtually everything else can be scanned and stored electronically. And if you do that, just make sure you have a super-duper backup system, because you wouldn't want to lose things. But yep, everything, you can actually go paperless. People have done it. So it is entirely possible. Of course, the same principles apply for filing things electronically. Any other questions?
Yeah, just back on that, Talane, in terms of storing things electronically. We've got a great question from Connor. He asked, paperless is great, but email is a nightmare. Any tips on managing emails and it's moved from the desk to the inbox?
Okay, great. Well, there's, I'm actually going to talk about that. So, tell you what, I'm just going to carry on. Are there many more questions after that one? Because we're going to talk about email in just a moment.
Yeah, that's for now.
That's it for now? Okay, tell you what, I'm just going to sail through then, because email is a big issue for most people. So we'll talk about that next. When people are struggling with organization, there's a few common problems. Now, these may not be yours, but these are sort of average problems that people have. And it makes it hard for them to stay organized and keep organized. And the number one thing is inconvenient storage. Most people's filing cabinets are on the other side of their desk, so that they have to get up and move to a different part of their office to file something. Or you might even have filing cabinets if you're in an office that might be in the hallway or some other place. Well, like I said before, if it takes that long to file something, you're not going to file it. That's too much work. You need to get your filing cabinet so that it's an arm's length away, and ideally you can just literally pop something into a file in the same amount of time it would take to pop it into a pile of papers. Now, for those of you who have to maybe have communal files in the office, that you may need a special box that says to file, and at the end of the day you take that box and go down the hallway and file it, or you give it to your assistant who then files it. And that can be the case in big offices. But if you can, and for the things that are your own files that you can keep in your own desk, make sure you've got your file cabinet within arm's reach. That makes such a difference. You'll be amazed, because then you'll find, oh, actually the system's easy to maintain. If it's easy to maintain and easy to do, then you're more likely to do it. The other big problem is that items have no home. So papers come in and they aren't assigned a file or a folder or a drawer, and this may be because your drawers are full, so you may need to archive. There was a well, we'll get to this, but yeah, so that might be the other main reason, is that there's no place to put things. So again, that means you're going back to step 2, which is doing your purging after you've sorted things out. So make sure you see how much home space you need, and maybe you do need to buy more supplies. One of the top organizers who always recommends having a whole stack of 100 empty files with the labels ready to write on, or you can handwrite the labels if you want, or get a label printer. Having those to hand, and so that immediately when you see, gosh, this thing doesn't have an existing file, it needs a new file, that you can immediately create a home for it. And by having that stack of empty blank files ready for their labels, then you do that, and then bing, you pop it in your filing cabinet, and it's got a home. The other problem is the speed of life and technology. People feel that they don't have time to organize. Now, this is an interesting one, that people say, oh, I just don't have time for this. Remember what I said, that's the critical difference, that 15 minutes a day and the 16 hours plus up front that you need to get started. So I have a very senior executive working for a corporation in the UK, and he said, well, I don't have time to do any of this stuff. I need a catch-up day. And I said, well, you're an executive, create the time. Tell your assistant who books your calendar that Thursdays, she can't book anything on a Thursday ever. And Thursdays are your day to catch up. And so a couple of days of catch up. And then once you've caught up, so he's given himself, 8 hours or 6 hours a working day in which he's not got appointments booked. And then that's his catch-up day, and he can handle maybe emergencies that come in. He can spend that time getting his desk organized. It's a day for him to catch up on the things that I've gotten behind on. And he said, wow, that was easy. And so now he has these blank Thursdays, and that's when he spends his time organizing. And I've actually encouraged him to not only do it personally, but then to allow other people in the company to have some time to purge and organize. When I used to work at Chase Manhattan Bank in New York, before I became a coach, I did this with I managed a bank branch down in Lower Manhattan, and we set aside time and said, okay, on Thursday or Friday afternoon, we said as soon as the bank closes at 3, we're going to do a clear out. And I got big, huge garbage bins, put them in the middle of the hall, and said, okay, everybody, let's just throw stuff out. And so we started that way with just a little bit of an office clear out. And it ended up being that we ended up having to get a dumpster. There was so much paper, so much out-of-date paper. We sent some to the bank archives in the central storage space, but a lot we had to just put in a major, huge dumpster and have it all shredded and burnt because it was so out of date. We had stuff going back from 1942 that was still in our offices. So it was amazing how much, once we started this process, what it led to, and cleaned out stuff that had been stored for years and years and years. So I've not only encouraged you to spend some time that it's very valuable to do this during your working day, but as well to encourage if you're a boss or a manager, to set time up so that everybody has a chance to clear out and get the whole team working on it, or the company for that matter. And again, people also think that organizing is dull and boring, and so they'd rather do something more interesting. And one of my most successful coaching colleagues, he was in the same camp as that, thought, oh, it's just too boring. And the only way he would do his filing is if his house cleaner sat and babysat with him. And literally, she sat there, and her whole job was to make sure that he didn't get distracted and start writing something or doing something more creative, that he would just do his filing. And she babysat him during that time. And if that's what it takes, it's worth doing. It's like, okay, I'm going to hire somebody to sit here with me and make sure that you do it. So that could be well worth doing as well if you just find that you can't get it. I find it helps to play some music while you're filing. If you're listening to music and filing, then it's not so dull. So those are the common problems. Now this brings us to sorting papers and emails. Same stuff, again, the same principles apply to paper and email. You need to ask yourself 3 questions. The first one is, what is this? Now this is part of the sorting process. So what is this thing? What is it? Do you need to, so that way you can start to sort it. So what is it? Why are you holding on to this? Is there some reason you need to keep this? And then the next question is, under what circumstances would I look for this again? So you start to look at, what is this? Why am I holding on to it? Would I need to see this again? Now here's an interesting little tidbit. 80% of what gets filed, and whether that's filed on your Microsoft Outlook, files on your email, or your whatever system you use for your email filing, or whether it's your paper files, 80% of it never gets retrieved. And this boils down to our 80-20 rule, that we get most of our 80% of our results come from 20% of our actions, where apparently it applies to filing as well. 80% of what we file we never actually retrieve. So if you can get better at binning things and getting rid of them and deleting them, it's probably just as well, because most of the time you won't need it. On the other hand, if it's easy to file things, again, decision making, oh, do I need to delete this? Might I ever? That can get exhausting. So I think rather than think about stuff and give myself all that mental agony, do I need to keep this? Might I need this in the future? I think that's exhausting, personally, because it's too many decisions. Instead of thinking of that, you might just say, well, I'm just going to file it. And if it's easy to find, then I can access it, and at least I know everything's filed, and I don't have to worry that I threw out that one thing that was so terribly important. So, just maybe not give yourself the stress of it and just get bigger files and file everything and just make sure they're well organized. Now, they can get over-jammed if you file everything. Because I don't like making the decisions, and that's, again, most people who have too much stuff are poor decision makers. So you can either learn to get better at making decisions, or you can learn to set up better systems so that you don't have to think about it. But I have found that if you let things get older, it's much easier to throw things away. I know you guys have found this out, I'm sure. If you've taken a 2 weeks holiday or vacation somewhere, and you come back to your inbox, and there's a big stack there of things that you need to sort through, or maybe you have a lot of things in your email that you need to sort through, you'll find that because they're a bit stale, some of those might be 2 weeks old or a week old, a lot of them won't be relevant. You say, well, I can throw that away, I can throw this away. And also, because you're batching the activity, you're doing it all in one batch, you can get through them very quickly. So you can say, okay, well, here's this huge stack of stuff, and you start throwing things out quite ruthlessly. Because it's batched, because it's older, it's easier. And that's the same with anything. So if you can batch your stuff, especially your emails, and then do them the next day, all the better. The older something is, the easier it is to make a better decision about it. When it comes in at that moment, it seems terribly urgent, and it gets too much importance. In fact, one of my colleagues, Mark Forrester, was a coach here in the UK, and he's written a book called Do It Tomorrow. And his whole strategy for time management is to do everything tomorrow, to procrastinate on purpose, in a sense, to deliberately procrastinate. Now, some emails will come in and they're an emergency or something you have to respond to, but the vast majority of what comes in does not need to be responded to today, especially things like emails. So what he recommends you do is you batch up everything and do it tomorrow. And that way you're going to be able to say, okay, it's a very interesting distinction between working off a closed list or an open list. And when the trouble that people have with emails and why it's such a problem for people is that it's always an open list. There's always new emails that are going to come in, and so you never get finished. You never ever get finished because there's constantly new stuff coming in. And that's discouraging. It's like, oh, you'll never get done. There's no sense of satisfaction. There's no sense of completion there. And that just, there's no fun in that. If you can batch, so I'm just going to give you an example of what he recommends. Pull out those emails that are urgent. Do those today. All the other ones that come in today, put them in a folder that's called Today's Emails, and then do them tomorrow. And what you'll discover is that you will then be working off a closed list instead of an open list, because those emails have a finite number. There might be 80 of them or 100 of them, but then you can see, okay, from yesterday I have 80 emails that need to be dealt with. And that's a finite number. You can actually work that list and get done. And you can say, oh gosh, well, to handle 80 emails, I probably need about 3 hours to do that. And so you can plan your day and say, I'm going to set aside 3 hours to contend with these 80 emails. But then you can actually finish something and get it done, as opposed to working off an open list that's constantly getting refilled. Very effective strategy. A lot of executives use this, and it can be transformative, completely can change. If you're an emergency immediate response sort of business, then you can't do that. I mean, you're designed to be an emergency response person. And this client that I was just talking about who set aside Thursdays, his boss is always having little emergencies that pop up and, oh, this needs to be handled with immediately. Is it really an emergency? Probably not. And most real emergencies mean the building's burning down or there's a fire or something. I mean, those are real emergencies that you do need to drop everything and get out of the building because there's a fire. But most of the stuff we have is actually perfectly, in fact, better done tomorrow than today. And you'll be dealing with it with a much cooler head than you would be if you tried to do it today in sort of an emergency panic method. And the big mistake people make is doing their emails throughout the day instead of batching the task. So at the very least, just check your emails twice a day. Remove any little pings or noises that come in. Take that off. And deliberately only focus on your email once and twice, once in the morning, once at night, and that's it. Batch them up, do them tomorrow, put them on your action list. That's the key there. So for dealing with your emails, and get unsubscribed from stuff that you don't need to be on. People CC everybody and their brother to sort of cover their backside. Get unsubscribed from stuff that you don't actually have to be CC'd on, and that will reduce the inflow that comes in. But that might work for you. Try that out. So it can really work for a lot of people in terms of shifting their dealing with email. Now for paper, this is one of my favorite ones. It comes from this movie, Barcelona. And in the movie, there was this guy who had trouble with papers, and his friend said, well, why don't you take a red pen, and every time you have a piece of paper, stick a red dot on it. And that way you can see how many times you've handled that piece of paper. And so the next time the friend came to visit his friend, said, so how are you getting on with the red dot technique? And his friend said, great. And he held up the piece of paper, and it was just, the papers were covered in red dots. It was sort of funny. But it actually is a really good, that being said, it actually is a really good motivating thing. Try it. Get a red. Red is good because it's bright and it's kind of warning notice. Red is good. And you can take this red pen and put a dot every time you handle a piece of paper and then shovel it somewhere else. And it'll just remind you, oh gosh, look, I've handled this 5 times already. When am I going to make a decision about this? And it's sort of your own little warning notice of how many times you're handling something. Very good way to train yourself into handling things only once, because you're going to say, ooh, do I really want to put a red dot on this, or should I just file this? Now, you can also use this. This is a great technique. You know what I said, I don't like making all these decisions because I find that tiring, so I just file everything. And when you file everything, then, of course, a lot of those files, 80% of them, will be unnecessary. So then you need to clear out new space. And so to do this, take your red dots, and now you can use a pen, or you can get little stickers if you want. Pop them on the file folder every time you go in to access a file. So you go into your file cabinet, you pull out a file. Stick a little red dot on it. Then at the end of the year when you're coming, or at the end of each quarter, depending on how many papers you're dealing with, when you're coming to look at that and say how much, what can I clear out? Well, everything that has a red dot is something that you used, so that's your 20%. And if it doesn't have a red dot, well, then you can either bin it, because it's in the 80% that doesn't matter, or you can archive it. If you have to archive it, you can put it up in deep, dark storage somewhere to refer to later. But get it out of your immediate files so that you have space. But that way, it just relieves all the decision-making, because you're just like, okay, all right, well, that's the 80%. I'll just pull these out. If it doesn't have a red dot on it, I'll pull it out, archive it, and then create space for new stuff to come in. Very simple, and then you never have to really make a decision. You just archive it until you run out of archiving space. But when that happens, it's so easy to say, okay, well, we've archived this in a year. And again, you can apply the same principle on that archived box. If you ever had to go into it, stick a red dot on it, and you might want to just tie a red pen to the box, and then you realize, oh, we've never even looked in this box for the last year. Well, I think it's fairly safe now. We can throw that away. Or some documents have to be kept for 7 years or whatever the time is. And they can say, well, we put this in here 7 years ago. Now we can throw it out without looking at it because there's no red dots on it. So you never looked at it. So again, eliminates all that decision-making, which I find is the part that drains most people. It certainly drains me is, oh, what do I do with this? Do I have to keep this? And that just takes too much time. So you can just eliminate all that, use your red dot technique, know that 80% you'll never look at, but who cares if you have the space? If you don't have the space, well, then you may need to do more clear-outs more regularly. But again, the older something is, the easier it is to clear out and sort. And the same with emails. You can take all your emails. So for example, say in your inbox you've got emails from 2012. We'll create a file folder that says emails from 2012 and move them all in there. If you ever need them, well, you know where they are. Or some people, maybe if that, you want to do it by month. These are my January 2012. These are my February 2012. And you can do it like that. But then, they're there if you should need them, and that keeps it quite simple. Okay, does that help at all? Oh, I didn't tell you about the cat attack method for emails. This is one that was invented by my cat that I had called Sweet Pea. And I was busy at my computer one day, and she liked to sit on my lap when I was working. I had a home office. This is after I quit the bank and became a coach. And she jumped on my computer one day on the keyboard, and somehow, I don't know how she did this, she deleted all the emails in my inbox. And I had this moment of sheer terror. I thought, oh my gosh, she deleted all my emails. And I had hundreds in there. And of course, then I realized they were all in the delete file. I thought, okay, there they are. So, moment of panic disappears. And okay, so they're in the delete file. Now, this is why this is a really good method. I went into the delete file, and of course, I started pulling out the emails. So I thought, well, actually, this one I can't delete. This one's important. This needs to go into action. And it actually forced me to sort of clear out my files. And what I realized was it's totally psychological. But if it's already in the delete file, you're more likely to keep it there. It's kind of like going through the rubbish bin. It's like if it's already in the bin, you're more likely to say, actually, that is garbage. Let's just let it stay there. Whereas when it's in your inbox, it has an exaggerated importance. So that's actually a really good technique. Just put everything in the bin and then pull out what you actually need. And that'll be your 20% that really matters. And if you can't quite bear to put it all in the delete file, put it in the old email file or backlog file. You can call it backlog. You can call it January 2013 emails. Put them in it by a month and just stick them so that they're organized in that way. And that if you ever should need to get them, you can get them. But you'll find that that's much easier than actually dealing them from the location of your inbox, where for some reason they seem to carry this exaggerated weight or importance or urgency that they don't actually merit or deserve. So if you want to be bold, try the counterattack method. Throw them all into your delete and then pull and really start with a clean slate. If you can't quite do that because you may need to save documents for your corporate reasons, then you can put them in an archive. Say call it the 2012 archive. And then pull from there anything that's actually important and needs dealing with right now. Okay, so I hope that helps a little bit. Checklist for filing success. Make sure that you invest in good quality lateral filing cabinets. So if you're dealing with papers, use good quality, get those green hanging file folders. Don't try to do box files. I have one client who was using box files. Well, what happens if you just have one piece of paper then? You're not going to put one piece of paper in a big box. You need to have some sort of filing cabinets with hanging file folders on them because conceivably there may be one piece of paper that needs to be filed so that you can access it again. So the hanging files are the way to go, not box files. You can color code things, so that makes it easier to find them. Label every folder. Black on white is the easiest to read, so don't get crazy with colors. Just on the label itself, stick to black and white. You might color code papers or your file folders, but keep the labels black and white. Make sure that if you're doing handwriting, that your handwriting is very clear and legible when you write the handwritten folders so that other people can access your files if that needs to be the case. That if you have an assistant or your house cleaner coming in to help or your office assistant coming to help, then they can do your filing too. Keep those folders and labels handy so that it's easy to make new files so that new files don't start backing up. And you might do that in your 15 minutes of the day. Say, okay, these things need new files, and you create those then. Or you might do them on the spot as you need them. Use an A to Z or A to Z filing system. But what you might find is, I have one organization guy who said do everything A to Z, and I disagree with that. I have clients, for example, and I have a client file folder, and they're all in one color, and all my clients are filed A to Z. Then I have my finances in another section, and those are all filed A to Z. So I actually have broken my file folders into categories that make sense. And then I know if I have a client goes, what file drawer to look in. I think if you do a complete A to Z, that means you're mixing up your finance stuff and with your client stuff, and that doesn't make sense to me. If it does to you, fine, that's okay, but I actually think it works to break things into broad categories. And then if you can color code those, so then, if all your finances are in green file folders, well then it's really easy to figure out where they should go. And then file as you go, tidy your desk at the end of the day, about 10 to 15 minutes. And if you have really a lot of paper files or even email files, you can create a file index, and that can help you locate what goes where. Okay? Color coding can really help with that too. You may be able to get away with it. But again, an index might be something if you're in a corporate setting and there's shared files, having a file index so people can find where things go really helps. Okay. We're probably getting close to the top of the hour here, so I'm just going to whiz through people who are managing their work list, it helps to have a master to-do list, and I call this the brain dump. And for people who are feeling overwhelmed, or if I have a client who feels overwhelmed, just ask them, okay, write everything that comes to mind to do, even if that's build a deck in your back garden, read War and Peace, file this report, do my taxes, everything on a master to-do list. And then you can categorize from there. But by writing everything that occurs to you, I've got so much to do, write it all down. When you see that it's on a piece of paper, there might be 200, 250 things there to do, but at least you can now see it's a finite number, and you can start dealing with it and say, okay, well, this is my home list, this is my work list. You can start to organize it and deal with it. And that just clears up your brain, because if you're trying to keep it all in your brain, it's exhausting. And you'll forget stuff, you'll lose stuff. Okay, 80-20 rule can apply to your master to-do list, figuring out what's the real important stuff that will make a difference, asking yourself what's important about today, and then use your backlog. If you want to do everything tomorrow or create a backlog, sometimes people who have piles and piles of paper, what I recommend that they do is just take a big box and say, okay, this is all my backlog of papers, and they just stick everything in that big box, and then they say, okay, I'm going to spend, and this can work for emails too, you can have an email backlog folder and just say, this is my backlog, this is the old stuff, and then just say, I'm going to spend 15 minutes or half an hour every day chipping away at the backlog, and then I'll deal with the current stuff as it comes in. And then because your backlog is in a box or in a folder, it is a finite list, and the idea then is to chip away at that backlog bit by bit, and in the meantime, you keep your desk clear with the current stuff. So that's how you can manage your backlog. This is just an easy purge list. I'm not going to go over this, like things that you can easily get rid of, old magazines that are more than a year old research materials, duplicate copies, drafts, etc. So this purge list can help you just throw these things away right away. Customize your solution. On this one, you want to make sure that if you're right-handed, for example, your files are on the right-hand side. If you're indecisive, try the red dot technique. If you're visually stimulated, use literature sorters, wall calendars. Again, personalize your organization system so that it works the way you think and the way you work. Okay, so just some ideas there. A bit of a summary here, clearing your desk, be ruthless. Keep any notes that you have in one book, not on Post-it notes or loose pieces of paper, but have a book for notes or an idea book, an idea logbook. Keep all your actions in one action or project list or folder, so you can see if your action items have a pile that's a folder or a box. If you want to remind yourself of something, use your diary or your calendar. Don't use a Post-it note. Otherwise, you end up creating visual clutter. Bring your financial paperwork up to date. Keep it that way. So you might need to spend time putting things in 3-ring binders to sort out your financial paperwork. If you get letters, you can just write a handwritten reply at the bottom of a letter and return it, so you don't have to store the original, unless you have to. And then remember, spend 15 minutes a day clearing off your desktop so that you're having a fresh start every morning. So those are a little summary there of everything we've talked about and some tips. We've got books that you can refer to now. None of these are particularly organizing. Coach Yourself to Success has a whole section there on clearing things out and is generally inspiring for people to declutter. We've got a career change coaching kit if you're looking for career change. We've got coaching online at lifecoach.com, and of course Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube. You can follow us any which way you want. I'm always happy to have you. And on the Life Coach, if you go to lifecoach.com, I also have a free tip of the week. So I'd invite you all and welcome you all to join our free coaching tip of the week. There's also free quizzes and other things that you can do there. So we're welcome to take advantage of any of these resources that you would like that we can help you with. And feel free to call me if you're interested in coaching. That brings us to the end of the hour, and we're delighted to have you all here. I hope this was helpful. Are there any questions at this point?
Hello, Talane. Thank you so much again for joining us, everyone, and also Talane for being a great, coming back to present again. Really loved the cat attacker method and the red dot technique, so they were great ideas and techniques, so thanks a lot again, Talane. We have a last question. I think you've actually already answered this for Darina in Dublin. She's asked, do you have any tips on how to stop using Post-it notes? And I think you mentioned using your diary or your calendar instead. Do you have any other tips?
Yeah, this is what I learned from my husband. He came into my office and removed every single block of sticky notes that I happened to have. So the first thing is get rid of all those Post-it notes. Don't have them around because they're insidious. And I used to have my computer screen was covered with Post-it notes. My desk was covered with Post-it notes. I was Post-it note mad. And my husband said, here, I've taken away all your Post-it note things. He won't let me have them. And because the moment I get them again, I start using them. They're insidious. And they do become just clutter, and it becomes visual clutter. And if you've got too many of them, it's overwhelming. They don't actually function anymore as effective reminders because there's too many of them. You end up visually blanking them out after a time, and then they're not effective. So the key is, instead of having them written on a Post-it note, you put it on your to-do list or your action list, or have a notebook. That's what my husband uses. He's very organized. And that's what I've started to do. So everything goes into a book. And you've got this little notebook here that's, could be a spiral notebook or something. And in that, what you would have written on the Post-it note goes in there. Now, if it's a reminder, something that you need to do today, put it in your calendar. Because people who work with calendars are actually really good at getting things done that are in their calendars. And I actually recommend that people I use a paper calendar. Now, some people use an electronic one. I actually use both for different reasons. But, again, like I said, I'm kind of between the two worlds, half electronic and half paper. But I use a appointment calendar and then, by 15-minute increments so that I can write stuff down. So if I need to spend 15 minutes to clean my desk, there's the space in there. And then I find, I should spend the next 15 minutes cleaning my desk. And because it's in my calendar, I'm likely to do it because I'm sort of trained myself to do what's on my schedule. So for those of you who are good at doing things off of a schedule, and that's what a lot of corporate people are used to doing, use that to your advantage and actually book things into your schedule that need to get done. And it also shows you, hey, you know what, I've booked everything in and I don't have enough time to do all this stuff. And that's useful information too.
Great, thanks so much.
You need to talk to your boss about when you're going to get these things done. So, but that's another webinar. Any other questions?
I think that's it for now, Talane. I think we're sort of past the hour, and I'd like to thank you all again for joining us. And if you like to see what's happening in terms of events in the future, please visit our website, morganmckinley.com. And Talane, very special thanks again for joining us in our second webinar, and hopefully many more in the future. And we'll look forward to seeing you on the 20th of June in London for your event.
Great. Well, I welcome everybody in Europe or anybody who's in Asia and Australia who's been on here to, if you happen to be in London, pop on in, and we're glad to meet you in person. And look forward to seeing as many of you as I can at that time. So thanks for coming today.
Thank you again.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.